absolutely wild as Vern Gagne's all-star wrestling goes coast to coast and continent to continent. The greatest wrestlers in the world.
He may be an apprentice carpenter, but I guarantee you he is a seasoned ring veteran.
I've been hit with bar stools, bar rags, barmaids.
I'm talking to you.
They're scared that Hulkamania's still running wild. Oh, yeah. I got a big fat wife and 9 kids at home, and I gotta feed them.
And take a look at Jesse the Body in real life.
Open your hand once, if you would.
You understand?
This is absolutely unbelievable. Totally, completely out of control.
He's coming in over the top. Hey! Look out!
If there's anything that says wild and out of control, is it us? I don't know. I know it's not me. Mick and Joe, it might be a couple of wild and crazy guys. Get it? The whole.
Just Chupik. He's the only one that fits the description. You and I, we're just guys. You know,
we're Jags. We're Jags. He's a dude.
He's a madman. He's
So you could say I'm a wild and crazy guy.
Wild and crazy guy. Yeah.
I'll let you guys handle the choreography.
I don't know. I don't even know. Like, I think isn't that the dance from
from Saturday Night Live.
Saturday Night
Wild
Live,
and
like
crazy guys.
Yeah.
Steve Martin and
Dan Aykroyd.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It looks like me when I get a bug bite.
Oh,
anyway,
guys.
Here we go.
Here we go. Yes, to another AWA Unleashed. We are wild. We are crazy. We are preeminent. And that's the way. We like it. All right.
We're in that time machine today on all counts, aren't we?
You like that? I don't even know if I made the reference right, but I'm trying to go back to your days. So in the 20s. So the roaring 20s, not the night. Yeah.
You better get the kerosene lamps and the crank up phone then.
He's a wild and crazy guy.
Here you go, guys.
Oh man. It's nice to laugh. It's nice to be able to talk some old school wrestling. Roller coaster of emotions here in this show, guys. Starting out having some fun as we always do. Like to break the ice. We've got our pinfall membership. You guys know about that. $4.99 a month. You can sign up. The link is on the YouTube channel. We've got our TeePublic. Got all of that. We're going to talk about 1960s enhancement talent. That's going to be the topic for today. I'm not going to go through all of the fun shilling and whatnot because, God, it just brings the mood down as we're talking about another one. And this was one that hit a little bit more closer to home because of being on the show, Mick.
Yeah. Our buddy Nacho Barrera. It's like from day to day, guys, you just don't know. Nothing is guaranteed. And there's Nacho. I would argue that outside of maybe Kenny J, George Gadaski, and Jake Milliman, I would think Nacho Barrera is probably right up there as one of the enhancement guys from the AWA's past that everybody is, yep, I remember Nacho Barrera. He passed away. I don't know the cause of death. It just got word from our friend Mike Moran down in Florida. Chris and I did last night. And as you said, Chris,
and as we're recording this on Friday, so that way people are. We're recording this on Friday the 12th. So by the time that there might be more information that comes out by the time this actually airs. But
good point.
I want people to know kind of the timeline that we're working with.
Yeah, very good point. And we had Nacho on the show, a number of months ago. What a great guy. He was he was one of these guys. He had a Facebook presence, and when he would come on, if you wished Nacho a happy birthday, if you said, "Hey, I loved your career," he took the time to individually answer everybody in the comment section and say, "Thank you, my brother. I really appreciate it. I love you, my brother." And God, it's just like, yeah, Kenny J, George Gadaski, and Nacho Barrera, three of the, maybe the Mount Rushmore of AWA enhancement guys are no longer with us. Nacho had just recently been given some award, and I don't know exactly what it was, but I know he had posted it on his Facebook page, some kind of a heritage award, Hispanic Heritage Award that he was very, very proud of. So Nacho, go up there. You don't have to do the job for anybody anymore, pal. You're over. And thank you for being on our program. And Godspeed to Nacho, and best wishes to his family and many, many friends.
It's been 34 years since the AWA closed its doors. Time will catch up to all of us at some point. I don't know how old Nacho was, but to your point of, Chris, I think you brought it up, of how another day and another passing of an AWA stalwart. I long said, and this is right after my dad died, that don't mourn the loss, celebrate the life.
Yes.
So for you, Nacho, we celebrate your career. Thank you for getting your ass kicked at the old TCN studios and allowing us to put you in the Mount Rushmore of AWA enhancement talent. And to go a step further than that, this is why we do, well, one of the reasons why we do this podcast. It is to remember, to celebrate, to laugh, to joke, to learn about our favorite territory, the AWA.
Yeah, and I just went back while you were talking there, Joe. I went back and I took a look at when the Nacho episode was. It was episode number 29, and it was way back in July of 2022. So It was over 3 years ago that we did that episode with Nacho Barrera. So if you want to go back and you want to listen to Nacho on the show, episode number 29 and July 26th, 2022 was when it became available. So R.I.P. Nacho.
And by the way, that's before I came on board.
Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. It was a dark time for us.
Speaking of enhancement talent, that's when you joined the crew. Yeah.
I've been doing the job ever since on this podcast.
You've been running into that knee in the corner ever since, pal.
So, as Jack Back would say, Nacho.
There we go. Love Nacho Barrera. Chris, I'm so looking forward to the show, and I know we're going to kind of preview it a little bit here.
Yeah, well, let's just go right into it. Go ahead and make that transition. I'm gonna get out, and then you guys just kind of go back and forth and just kind of give me that cue when I need to put these pictures up, because I know there's going to be a lot to it.
Yeah, there really is. And it's enhancement talent from the 1960s. And I know, Joe, you had a couple of questions about why enhancement talent and why the 1960s. So fire away, buddy, and I'll bullshit my way through it.
Well, it's not so much why. I will say that the enhancement talent deserves their spotlight, even though they very rarely, if ever, had their hands raised, let alone wearing a championship belt. They were a very important and integral part of the AWA and of other territories. They are the ones that helped build up the name talent that was going to be at that arena that you would plunk down the money for. Yes. The promoters didn't want to give away a star versus a star match on TV, at least very rarely. And if they did, it always ended up in, run in or somebody being attacked and, setting up an angle. But the enhancement talent deserves their day in the sun. My question is, why did we just do the 1960s? Why don't we do the 70s or 80s? Or for that matter, why don't we just do a general one? I'm not that I don't think we should be doing this one, but specifically, why did you choose the 60s?
Several reasons. First of all, to your point about how important the enhancement guys were, Dick Beyer, the late Dr. X, he was the guy who said these are the carpenters of the business. Without the Kenny J's and George Gadaskis and whoever, there would be no Dr. X. There would be no Crusher. There would be no Larry Hennig and Harley Race. These guys made the other guys look like superstars, look superhuman. And that's what they were paid for. They didn't get a lot of money. They had their weekly moment in the sun. The reason I chose the 1960s, couple of reasons. First of all, I was around at the TV studio back in the 60s, so I remember seeing so many of these guys live. A lot of our audience, they're going to say, who? Never heard of this guy. And that's exactly the point. Kenny J and George Gadaski are not going to be on the list today because we talked Kenny and George, forever and ever. They're the standard bearers for enhancement talent. But these guys, they wrestled at a time when it was such an innocent thing. Some went back to the black and white television era. As I said, they put over the superstars, and I looked at the list of the 1960s. When we did 1966 last week, and I was looking over some of the results and what have you, oh my God. I look at this guy, I look at that. I forgot all about him. But yeah, he was a mainstay. And the difference between the 60s and even going into the 70s and the 80s was that there was a very small niche of guys, a very small continuing, revolving over and over again, the same crew basically that would come in and do AWA TV. You get in the 70s and especially the 80s, then that expands a little bit more. Guys are in for one shot on TV and then they're gone. But this was a stalwart crew that came in all the time to do AWA wrestling. And as I say, I know some people are going to say, what are you doing a show on these guys for? I never heard of that guy. Exactly. That's the point. And they would never get their moment in the sun or their 30 seconds in the sun if it wasn't for what we do here. So we're going to honor those guys. And in the name of Nacho Barrera, of all things.
The timing is perfect. I will have to say that I'm not one of those that are saying why, but I am one of those as I took a look at the list. So I prep all of Mick provides the photos. I prep all of the photos, get them cleaned up, enhanced and whatever. There's 21 names. I recognize 6. Now, granted, I was born in 1965, but when during my time with the AWA, the majority of this footage was gone. It was, and the names that I do remember or that I do recognize were from matches, the very few tapes that Vern didn't record over. So I'm excited to learn about these guys. They most definitely deserve their spot in the sun. So for today's episode, let's raise their hand, put the strap on them, and let's put them over. So let's get started on the list. Chris, the first one up, and Mick, I'm just going to sort of guide this, but this is going to be yours because you are the one that knows who the hell these guys are.
Well, it's interesting. Here's a disclaimer too. There's some of the guys that I know a lot about, or more than some of the others, and others I just remember because this guy wrestled on television consistently in the AWA area, made that transition when the AWA network started farming out their tapes around the country. This gentleman, and I don't know his real name, I should, but I don't, Marquis de Paris. That was the name that he used. The Marquis of Paris, whatever Marquis means in French. Marquis de Paris was a pretty good looking guy. You know, he's got that movie star look about him. I believe he was French Canadian, and he would come in and he would do the AWA All-Star tapings. He was consistently a heel. I don't remember him ever being a baby face, but put that down in your record books, folks. You have seen a picture of AWA Enhancement guy, the Marquis de Paris. And Eddie Sharkey and I, whenever I see Eddie, I say, Marquis de Paris, how are you? And Eddie knows right away what I'm talking about. So there's somebody else besides me that remembers Marquis de Paris.
Very cool. Let's move on to the next one. This one is the Great Dane.
Johnny Dante, the Great Dane, and this is up here for our buddy Steve Lardy. Steve, I know, is a Great Dane fan, a Great Dane fan. No, I didn't stutter. The Great Dane was one of these guys. He kind of looked like the legendary Hank Meadows, who was sunburned and chopped to pieces by Larry Hennig. The Great Dane here probably weighs about $190, so he outweighed Hank Meadows by 63 pounds. But this Great Dane, again, a regular on the AWA All-Star Wrestling Network. He came in as a heel. He would work shows, the house shows, the bigger events, because he was that talented that Vern and Wally saw something in him. The interesting thing about the Great Dane, he has a victory, believe it or not. He pinned Vern Gagne on television, if I remember correctly. Vern was in a feud with Mitsu Arakawa. And Vern is wrestling the Great Dane, and I believe Mitsu came to ringside, gave Vern one of those illegal karate thrusts to the throat, unbeknownst to the referee, and I think the Dane went over on Vern Gagne, if I remember right. If not, Shire will correct me. But there he is, Johnny Dante, the Great Dane.
So obviously that was a non-title match on TV.
Obviously, yes. As most of them were. There were very, very few title matches on television, as opposed to the 6 or 7 per night that we have this time.
Yep. Okay, next up on our Enhancement Talent tribute, Jack Allen.
Jack Allen. And let me tell you about Jack. And he's another guy, look at the good looks in these guys. I mean, Jack Allen, your all-American baby face, regular star in the AWA TV show. And he was one of these guys that was good enough to work some of the house shows around AWA territory. Little backstory to Jack Allen. When I was just a pup and I was going down to the Dykeman Hotel wrestling office, the very first wrestler that I saw when I got off the elevator on the 6th floor back in was Jack Allen. And great guy, great talent, your typical milquetoast babyface. I don't think I ever heard him cut a promo on television, but that's the look of the wrestlers, folks, back in the 1960s. Clean cut, good looking babyface.
And he looks like he was in shape. I mean, you can see the lats, and I'm surprised he didn't at least get to the opening card status.
Yeah, I think they, like I say, I think they used Jack on a couple of house shows locally. If I remember correctly, he may have also used the name Buddy Allen in some circuits, but I'm not 100% sure on that one. But Jack Allen, and the next two guys that I saw at the Dykeman Hotel were Reggie Parks and Moose Cholak, just for historical reference. But Jack Allen was the first guy.
Nice. Okay, moving on our list. Next up is going to be Tony Nero. I'm sorry, I'm laughing at the olive leaves or whatever the hell those are.
Yeah, I think they build Tony Nero out of Rome, Italy. Again, George Shire, I'm sure, will correct me. He also wrestled in other territories as Prince Tony Nero. That would explain the growth on his head, the foliage around the the forehead of Tony Nero. He was looks like he would be in a mob movie, but he was not. He was a classic, old school, no nonsense heel. who wrestled pretty consistently here in the AWA territory. And at one point, I sent Shire a message last night. I hadn't heard back from him yet this morning. But at some point, Tony Nero wrestled as the Masked Man. I don't know if it was for a spot show here in the AWA area, if he was filling in for Dr. X at the time when Dick Beyer couldn't make an event. But Tony Nero, Prince Tony, an AWA stalwart enhancement guy in the mid-1960s. Boy, have I got stories, huh?
Did he keep the when he was under the mask? Did he still wear the?
I think that was actually part of it. That was him. I mean, I think he had foliage growing out of his head. Very unique at the time, but every time he took a shower, I think that it grew just a little bit more.
You might want to get that checked out.
Yeah.
On to the next one on the list, Claude Patterson.
Take a look. That is Thunderbolt Patterson.
Wow.
Gentlemen, started out in the AWA as an enhancement guy on television. Of course, he had how many years in the wrestling business? But the old Thunderbolt, everybody has to start off somewhere. Harley Race started as an enhancement talent. So did Roddy Piper. So did Terry Funk. They were enhancement guys in the AWA. And the old Thunderbolt was in among that group. And this guy, legendary in the business. He's at all the major reunions and functions and get-togethers right now. He's revered in the wrestling business, is Thunderbolt Patterson.
Quick Thunderbolt story. The first time that I met him was at the Hall of Fame this past year in the lobby. And went and introduced myself. I knew who he was. And he asked me, sort of like my connection. We did all of that, told him about Ron. Then he asked how Ron and I met. And I told him it was working my time with the NWWL. So he asks what that stood for. I told him Naked Women's Wrestling League. And then somebody that was there with them looks at me with a surprised look on his face. And he goes, "You do know that he's a reverend, don't you?" Yeah, but he's a guy too. So, I mean, I'm sure, anyway. That's
you gave that information to the guy that does the opening prayer and the invocation at the Cauliflower Alley Club. So good going there. There you go.
What? He's never seen a naked woman before?
I would never have been involved in an organization like that. Never.
Oh my gosh, that's such a kayfabe. So moving on to our next enhancement talent. That he was pretty green. In fact, he was Bill Green.
He was Bill Green at the time. And then I don't know if he sat outside and spoiled or what happened. But that is our friend Bulldog Bob Brown. And George Shire has mentioned on many occasions that Bulldog is one of the rare guys that not only changed his name, but he changed his color. And Bulldog Bob was an enhancement guy consistently. I mean, he was on AWA television, losing matches right and left for years. When he finally went down to the Kansas City territory, he and Bob Geigel, of course, became tag team champions down in that neck of the woods. And when he came back into the AWA area, he was all of a sudden, he was Bulldog Bob Brown. And his legendary match with the Giant Baba at Wrestle Rock will go down in the annals of wrestling history. Bulldog Bob Brown, but then he was Bill Green.
You had to bring up that match at Wrestle Rock, didn't you?
Who's keeping you on your toes, pal?
Oh, quite possibly the worst match. No, it was actually him, Rocky Mountain Thunder, Silo Sam.
No. Bulldog and Baba were the worst because they had an extended length of time in the ring. It was extended torture.
And in front of about 15 to 18,000 people. Yeah. So yeah, I'll give that one to you. Now, the next guy, I've heard his name. Good Irish guy, Joe Tommaso.
Oh, yeah, good Irish guy.
Yeah.
Let's put up Tiger Joe Tommaso if we can. Joe Tommaso. Again, 1960s, I would assume he's an Italian guy. Tiger Joe worked extensively in the Chicago area and the Indianapolis area. He teamed up with a guy by the name of Stomper Guy Mitchell. Joe Tommaso also put on a mask and wrestled as the Bat, not a baseball bat, one of the wing gimmicks. Joe Tommaso, the Bat, in and out of AWA television territory, was not a consistent performer, but enough that he got some recognition here in the Twin Cities area and around the horn in the AWA. But again, his claim to fame was not in the AWA specific. It was more in Indiana and Illinois.
Okay. For our next enhancement talent, we're going to go into the lab, if I'm not mistaken, and check in on, is it the Professor Steve Druck?
Professor Steve Druck. And there's Professor Steve. And, fans who are regular viewers of the show, of our podcast, both of them, probably remember that Steve Druck started as an enhancement guy in the AWA in, I believe, the late 1950s into the early 1960s. And then he was given an opportunity of a lifetime. They made him a heel manager, gave him the derby hat and the cane, and he feuded with the Crusher, the likes of the Crusher. And he associated himself with the Larry Hennig Harley Race, Chris Markoffs of the world. Had about probably a year to two run as their manager and feuding with the Crusher. And then by the later 1960s, old Professor Steve was doing jobs again on television. So he had his moment in the sun, but fell from grace pretty quickly. And he's one of those guys, we always wanted to get him at a Kenny J reunion or an AWA reunion, but he became very reclusive and removed himself from the business. And we just lost the professor just not that long ago. Professor Steve Druck from Minneapolis, Minnesota.
Wow. I always sort of chuckle when I see somebody use this as their, I would say, first name, because I automatically think of the old cartoons. Speedy Gonzalez. I mean, Speedy Lawrence.
Yeah. Jules Speedy Lawrence. And it's really important, Jules, that's you gotta mention Jules. He was, when I started watching wrestling, I think Abe Lincoln was on one of the first shows I saw, but Speedy Lawrence was working consistently, AWA television. He had less hair, even when I saw him, that he does in this picture. And the interesting thing about it, he's got a championship belt. Couldn't tell you where that was from, but he was actually a shooter from what I understand. He really could take guys in the ring, especially young guys, and literally show them the ropes. He was a no-nonsense guy, very, very tough. But in the AWA, he came out, I believe, if I remember correctly, long black tights. That's about it. Nothing fancy about Jules Speedy Lawrence. Did the job on television, got his paycheck, and went home. But yeah, he was a mainstay in the 1960s.
You've got my curiosity up as to what that belt was. An enhancement talent in one territory, yet a champion in another.
Joe, and not knowing for sure, I'm going to guess that was probably some Canadian championship. I wouldn't swear to it. Again, I'm going to rely on George. I'm sure he'll know, but I do believe that Speedy wrestled up in the Montreal area a lot, so I would guess that's what we got going on there.
Okay, well, we go from I'll say at least a decent name in Speedy Lawrence to something a little less imaginative, Bill Todd.
Let's put Bill Todd's picture up on the screen if we can, Chris. So we're going to talk a little bit about Bill Todd. Astute wrestling fans will say, hey, wait a minute. That's Al Tomko, the promoter from Winnipeg. And by God, you're right. Al Tomko wrestled here in the AWA area TV as Bill Todd. I don't know why. He came back as Crazy Legs Leroy Hirsch. Crazy Legs Leroy Hirsch. In his second go around here in the AWA, and then became the promoter and part-time wrestler up in the Winnipeg, Canada area. Again, when you're talking 1960s TV, Bill Todd, Crazy Legs, goofy arms, whatever the hell he was back at the time, Al Tomko was a mainstay enhancement guy in the AWA. There you go. Little history for those who care.
The next guy I have heard, and if it's the same one that I believe I've had some interaction with, then I'm anxious to see it. Tony Savoldi.
Tony Savoldi. That's the name he used in the AWA area. Wrestling fans will recognize him, I hope, as Tony Condello. The promoter up in West 4 Wrestling up in the Winnipeg, Canada, and further points north. Tony Condello, as a promoter, would take guys on his death tour every winter. They would go into the far reaches of northern Canada where no man, woman, or beast would ever want to live. They would put on wrestling shows. Had the opportunity to work with Tony in 1986. But here in the AWA area, is not the biggest guy in the world. Tony was probably about 5'6", maybe. Kind of your junior heavyweight type, clean cut, not all-American, all-Canadian guy. Did enhancement jobs here as a babyface in the AWA as Tony Savoldi, but apparently kept his Italian/Canadian roots. Real name Tony Condello. What a guy! What a guy!
Okay, let's continue on. We're about halfway through our list. Our next enhancement talent from the 60s, George Drake.
George Drake, not George Gadasky. And I want to reiterate for those who may have joined us late, you're lucky, you missed the first few minutes of us, Gavin, but not George Gadasky, George Catalina Drake. And George was an accomplished wrestler. He had a pretty good history behind him, a journeyman wrestler of some note, wrestled here in the AWA area, again, the 1960s. I believe he appeared on an episode of Superman, The Adventures of Superman with George Reeves on television. He was a movie actor / wrestler. Teamed up here in the AWA area with Kenny J. Eddie Sharkey, George Catalina Drake and Eddie Sharkey, and they would battle the likes of Larry Hennig and Harley Race, and they were both, Eddie and George were excellent wrestlers, gave a great accounting of themselves, good-looking guy. Our friend Dixie Jordan, Princess Little Cloud, said that George Catalina Drake was perhaps the nicest man she ever met in the wrestling business. So there you go, little side note. But George Catalina Drake, again, classic movie star, good looks, babyface through and through.
What's with the Catalina?
I'm assuming that he probably either lived on Catalina Island or built himself out of there or something. I would assume.
Okay, just thought I'd ask.
Yep.
Next on the list, Johnny Case, and that is Kace.
Johnny Case, 1960s enhancement talent in the AWA. He was over very, very big in the Chicago area. Johnny Case, there was a program called Wrestling Champions out of Chicago back in the 1960s. And Johnny Case was a regular on that program, along with guys like, and I'm going to throw some names out here, Santiago Acosta, Jose Betancourt, Johnny Case. This was a time when you had Buddy Rogers and Pat O'Connor as your mainstays, even the Crusher in the early 1960s in Chicago. Johnny Case was a tough guy. He was one of those bulldog guys in the business, tenacious as hell. He got some victories. I believe he teamed up with the original Nikolai Volkov in the Chicagoland area, who, of course, was not a Nikolai Volkov. But Johnny Case, steadfast, heel through and through, tough guy, and kind of an in-and-out talent here, enhancement-wise in the AWA. Johnny Case.
And there's another one that was wearing a belt.
Yeah, and I would assume this is some kind of a Midwest championship belt or something out of Illinois, out of the Chicago area. Just guessing.
Okay, let's not get rattled on the next one. I'm talking about Bob Saber. This is not Adnan rattling his saber. Hold on. That's not a saber.
No, it's not a saber. Bob Saber wrestled in the AWA as an enhancement guy under the name Bob Saber. What happened was, and the reason behind this picture, in 1964, when the Beatles became very popular and came over to the United States, Bob Saber transformed himself into George Ringo, the wrestling Beatle. That's correct. That is George Ringo. And of course, capitalizing on the popularity of the Beatles, the Fab Four, this guy made some money. He didn't wrestle as George Ringo here in the AWA area. That was a little bit farther east. But Bob Saber, who was just a journeyman wrestler, comes up with this gimmick. You know, it was interesting because they were doing that at the time. A fellow by the name of Tony Marino, ex-wrestler, passed away not that long ago, wrestled as Batman, put on a full Batman costume to avoid copyright infringement. It was Battman, but you knew who the hell the guy was supposed to be. He had a sidekick, Robin, in the corner with him. That's what they were doing back then, capitalizing on the popularity of musicians and TV stars. Bob Saber, a.k.a. George Ringo, the wrestling Beatle.
Do you know if he happened to use his guitar in the same fashion as the honky tonk man? You ever smash that guitar over somebody's head, or is that too expensive of a gimmick to replace?
I would guess, considering the budget of wrestling back in the day, and considering I know Bob Saber worked for Dick the Bruiser, so I'm not sure that Bruiser will want to fork over money for a new guitar every week. So I'm guessing that was probably a one and done with George Ringo. Boy, that's original. George Ringo. And then John McCartney, I'm sure, would have been the other tag team partner, mid-1960s.
Well, I mean, can you blame Bruiser, though? I mean, no. if he would have had to have bought a new guitar every week, that's going to cut into the beer money.
Absolutely.
Priorities.
You got to make a choice.
Yep. Okay, next on the list, this guy I've heard of. I think you may have mentioned him earlier in this podcast in passing. Jose Quintero.
That's Jose at the beauty parlor. I've talked about Jose Quintero before, and for guys like me who grew up 1960s AWA, he was a regular. He looked like Fidel Castro, and because he did, they built him out of Havana, Cuba, and they called him Bad Man Jose Quintero. The Bad Man, I believe his first name was Joe. He lived in New York someplace, and to hear Eddie Sharkey tell it, to save money, when the AWA would bring him into town, he stayed in the back room at the Dyckman Hotel, or it was Eddie Sharkey's closet, and that's serious. It was either the Dyckman Hotel, I forget which, or Eddie Sharkey's closet at home, where Jose Quintero stayed to save money on the hotel. And Jose's claim to fame, never saw him in a match. He would wrestle in loser battle royals here in the Twin Cities area and around the Horn. They called them losers at the time, Battle of the TV Losers. Boy, how disrespectful that was. But his claim to fame, no matter who he lost to on television, Joe, he would get up and he would grab the referee and he would say, "You give me a fast count, you son of a bitch. You give me a fast count." And that was Bad Man Jose. Matter of fact, here's another Jose Quintero story. I'll kill a little time here. At the Dykeman Hotel, my buddy Bruce Buckstein wanted Jose Quintero to sign an autograph for him out in the lobby of the Dykeman Hotel. And Jose saw a picture of Vern Gagne, an 8x10 of Vern Gagne in Bruce's manila envelope, and spit on the picture of Vern Gagne. No TV cameras around. He didn't have to go into kayfabe mode, but either he had been shorted on a payoff or he was just being a heel outside the ring. The bad man, Jose Quintero.
I just gotta, Chris, could you just put that back up for a sec, please? I love seeing pictures from different eras and looking at, it's not wallpaper, it's probably tile. You think that you could get by with having that type of tile wall without being given a little shit?
What are you talking about? That's exactly what I have in the bathroom right now. What are you making fun of me for? I don't make the money that you do. Don't make fun of the less fortunate.
But Mick, that's why I'm here, to make fun of you. That's I was asked, come on the podcast, be a regular, because we got to keep Mick Karch in line, and you're the one that can do it, Joe.
You got any more?
That is true.
See?
That is true.
Oh, well, look who surfaces. Oh, my God.
Must be a full moon. Okay, next. Frankie Hester is our next enhancement talent to learn about.
Let's take a look at Frankie Hester. If we got the photograph, there's Frankie. Frankie, you notice that so many of these guys are wearing championship belts. Frankie Hester in other territories worked as a singles and a tag team wrestler in the 1960s, and he was an accomplished talent. When he came into the AWA area on television, not so much. He would, one of these guys would give a good accounting of himself. He looks the part. There's no question about it. He's got that 1960s babyface look about him. I'm not sure, again, what that championship belt is. I know that he wrestled in the southwestern part of the United States quite a bit, but he was a pretty good hand, Frankie Hester. Not consistently on AWA TV, but 1960s, he was there. He made an impact.
Yeah, the thing with enhancement talent that people, I think, should keep in mind or in perspective, I'll use the Iron Sheik as an example. When, for that matter, anybody that really came out of Vern's camp, when you first start, you're going to be setting up the ring. And when you first start, you're going to be refereeing. And when you first start, most 98% of the time, you're going to be an enhancement talent before you get over. So, a Frankie Hester, you've seen him with the belt on. This is a photo from probably the 70s, if I'm going to guess, judging by the wood paneling. It's not the tile of Mick's bathroom. But it's the wood paneling. So this is a later picture of Frankie Hester. So my point is, a lot of the guys, they pay their dues to, they're in 1, 2, 3 territories. They go someplace, they make a home for themselves, and then they get the strap. Not all of them, but there are a few.
A great point. And, we talked about Thunderbolt Patterson earlier on. Jim Rashke started that way. Ric Flair started that way. Greg Gagne paid his dues, setting up and tearing down the ring and refereeing. Everybody starts somewhere. And it's interesting. You note that so many of these enhancement guys are wearing championship belts. So to your point, Joe, they do enhancement on the AWA television. They get the green out of their system. They get some ring time. And boom, they go to another territory. They've got the experience and they're over.
In fact, there's one story that I remember somebody, or not even a story, but somebody had mentioned to me. This would have been mid-80s, early to mid-80s, but that Jesse Ventura had gone down to the NWA, and I wouldn't say it was a squash match, but that he wasn't put over and he wasn't there for very long. If that is true, I can't confirm it. I didn't see him on there. But if that's true, that's just an example of how you can be a star in one territory, main eventing there. You go to another territory and the gimmick just doesn't work. Or maybe the promoter didn't like you enough to give you that shot. So that's another reason why I think a lot of the guys went around the horn, went to different territories to see, okay, maybe this promoter thinks I've got something and I can stick.
Did Vern ever, because we see these pictures with the belts, did Vern ever acknowledge any sort of championships from any other territory? Or it was like what you did there didn't matter? You're somebody completely different when you're up here.
If you were a major star like a Luthez or something, you were brought into AWA territory, then Vern would allude to, he's been a world champion without necessarily mentioning the NWA.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but these guys, the enhancement guys, I don't think were ever acknowledged as champions. To Joe's point, it kind of works both ways. You had the enhancement guys getting into the business, working enhancement on TV, and then going somewhere else and becoming a star. Then you have the guys that were stars in the AWA, went to another territory and wound up doing jobs on television. And there's a lot of guys that did that. The luster wears off. Depends on the promoter, depends on the demographic. So yeah, good point, Joe. Really appreciate that.
And it was easy to get away with it because there was no internet. Cable was still in its infancy. I would probably guess, let's say by even 1985, that maybe only half of the population had access to cable. Everything else was, the rabbit ears and local TV channels.
Yep.
So, the promoters or the wrestling industry was able to get away with that, with moving guys around. Yeah, one guy just got hurt and he's out for 6 months, and then next week he's doing a job on TBS.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, back to our list. Here we are. Danny Pletchus.
Danny Pletchus. There he is. And Danny Pletchus was another Bulldog. And it was Bulldog Danny Pletchus, I believe, was preceded Bulldog Bob Brown. I think of the two, Danny Pletchus, Bulldog Danny, looks a little bit more like a Bulldog than Bob Brown did. As I'm thinking of Bob Brown, Bill Green's face, I don't know what dog you would liken him to. But Danny Pletchus certainly looked like a Bulldog. And this is another guy, a tried and true wrestling veteran. They call him a journeyman. Because he had been everywhere, done everything in the wrestling business. He was over big in the southern part of the United States, especially in Texas. When he came into the AWA, not so much. He would wrestle in these loser battle royals. He would get beat on TV, always the heel. And, it's just these interesting or not so interesting little asides. Wrestlers, you would make noises in the ring. They had their own, like Larry Hennig, hip, nope, hip, nope, hip, nope. That was like a Larry Hennig would do it all the time. Or Vern would, Vern would kind of do that. Danny Pletchus, when he would hit a guy with a chop, would actually take a couple of steps back, hit him with the chops, and go, chops, chops. Kind of like your wife does with you, Chupik.
Yeah, but I asked for it.
Well,
Yeah, that's a whole nother story. Bye,
Danny. Bye, Bulldog.
Okay, moving on. We've got 4 more enhancement talents. Our next one is a little pit bull in the throat. Juan Zendejas.
Juan Zendejas. Doesn't he look a little bit like Dennis Franz of NYPD Blue in kind of a thinner way? He looks like that would be a still shot from a movie, and it's because Juan Zendejas, who worked also as John Zenda, was also a movie actor. Here in the AWA area, 1960s, he was a mainstay. in the enhancement talent ranks. Eddie Sharkey worked with Juan Zendejas many, many times. He was one of these guys like George Gadasky or Kenny J. He would wrestle anybody and everybody on TV. For the most part, he was a babyface, scientific wrestler, but depending on the opponent, he would eventually go the heel route. But he was pretty consistent here in the early or mid 1960s AWA enhancement scene. Juan Zendejas, and again, I keep referring to the loser battle royals because they would have them around the horn. And I hate to say it, but the guy that would almost always win those loser battle royals, and I would prefer that we call them enhancement battle royals, was Eddie Sharkey. They would put Eddie in that group of guys that didn't win too much on television, but Eddie would always go over in the battle royals, even when Juan Zendejas was in one.
Okay, we got 3 left. Next on the list, I'm going to talk slow to give Chris time to pull up a photo of Kenny Yates.
Kenny Yates, who had Kenny Yates Jr. and Rowdy Yates. His sons were independent wrestlers here in the state of Minnesota. The story goes that Kenny was a former boxer. They would allude to that as he was about to go down to defeat on AWA All-Star Wrestling. But Kenny Yates, K.O. Kenny, and that's where he got the name, was from his boxing background, was another regular. I mean, he was right up there. It was Kenny J and Kenny Yates, and Kenny J and Kenny Yates. They would always talk about those two, the Battle of the Kennys. They would set up the Battle of the Losers. That's what they called it. That's not what I'm calling it. But Kenny J would ultimately go over Kenny Yates. Kenny was a mainstay here in the Twin Cities area, AWA TV. Wrestled around the horn, wrestled around the country. Here in the AWA, yeah, he was one of those guys. Yep, Kenny Yates. When he came out from behind the curtain, you'd hear that collective groan from the audience, but he would go in there and he would do his job and the job, so to speak.
I brought up when you saw a photo, you could sort of tell the period, whether it's, Mick Karch's 1950s bathroom or the wood paneling of the 70s. You take a look at the talent and the trunks that they wore. It was more, it would go up to your belly button, and we'll just say they were a lot bigger than the standard trunks that are being worn today. For the guys, the women, that's a whole different wardrobe.
The guys would wear the trunks up to their navel, whereas you would wear those spandex tights of yours up to your nipples. Which
no, it would just be sheer nylon.
Oh God.
Okay, 2 left. Next on the list, Guy Taylor.
Guy Taylor is infamous, and not for a good reason. Guy was another mainstay here in the AWA, consistently on the All-Star Wrestling Network, worked house shows around the horn besides, because he was that notch above what your typical enhancement guy may have been at the time, talent-wise and look-wise. 1968. Guy Taylor is wrestling the legendary Dr. X Dick Beyer on Minneapolis television on the AWA network. And of course, Guy is the babyface, Dr. X the heel at the time. After the match was over, I remember specifically, and I don't think this is necessarily a cause, but I remember at one point in the match, Guy Taylor's head hit the lower rope strand, really hard, whatever the maneuver was, but he caught the back of his neck and his head on the lower rope strand, just a whiplash effect, and it looked pretty serious. Turns out after the match, Guy Taylor is getting his payoff, and he dies of a heart attack at the Calhoun Beach Hotel that particular night. The officer in attendance, Bob O'Brien, and a couple of other people tried doing CPR on Guy Taylor. Wally was there, and it made the newspapers here in the Twin Cities. I think he was 31 years old at the time. 31 or 32 years old. So a tragic end for Guy Taylor. Talented guy, appeared consistently, but what a way to go out.
Yeah, no shit. That is definitely sad.
Yeah.
And our last enhancement talent is none other than Paul Caruso.
You know, this guy doesn't look like a Paul Caruso necessarily, and I'll tell you why. Lorne Corlett was his name. He wrestled as Paul Caruso. Again, if you had TV AWA on in the mid-1960s, you saw this guy consistently. All of a sudden, Paul Caruso leaves the AWA territory and becomes one half of Kurt and Karl von Steiger, the noted German team, clearly heels back in the day. Not here in the AWA area. They wrestled extensively out in the Pacific Northwest area and into Utah. But yeah, Paul Caruso was a kind of a nondescript TV enhancement talent. But again, he's one of these guys that worked so many matches and had a couple of 3 years under his belt wrestling anybody who was everybody in the AWA area. Gets his footing underneath him and becomes the noted, hated German Karl von Steiger. So he went from an Italian guy. Corlett, I'm guessing, is probably French. I don't know, French-Canadian. And then Caruso, you got the Italian guy, and then Karl von Steiger. All the same dude. Paul Caruso here in the AWA. So there you go.
Only in the world of professional wrestling. I love it.
As I used to say in the Bockwinkel Brigade bulletins when I had a little bit of edge to me and Nick would raise an eyebrow and say, did you really have to go that far? I would list the top 10 enhancement guys and I would refer to them before I had more empathy as the battered bums of the idiot box. That's the I would list the top 10 and Nick would
words hurt, Nick. Words hurt.
Yeah, they do. And, Nick would do the old Bockwinkel, So that's the kind of response I got. But I wanted to give these guys a moment in the sun. And, Chris, a couple of years ago, you challenged me to put together 200 guys, 200 enhancement names.
I think I still got that list of two. I think somebody was like, you couldn't name 200 you couldn't name 100 enhancement talent from the AWA. And you're like, I'll do you one better. I'll make you 200. And I've still got that list.
And these days, honest to God, I could go 300-400. I really could, but it's they deserve their moment in the sun. And again, this show is dedicated to one of the best of the bunch, and Nacho Barrera. Nacho, rest in peace, my friend. And thank you to all the guys, all the carpenters of the business who paved the way for the superstars.
Yeah, and in today's wrestling, it really is a dying spot on the show. Everything you see on network,
everything's high profile.
Yeah, exactly. It's the angle. You don't have the Nacho Barreras maybe getting one chop in and then getting the snot kicked out of them for the rest of the time.
I'll tell you what they do now, Joe and Chris, and as far as enhancement guys, you may have some big monster, on whatever, AEW or WWF, who wrestles the local guy, who they will build from, East Huppittsville, Long Island, New York, and he'll get the pop, and then the fans will count, let's go jobber, let's go jobber. That's about as close as you come. So it absolutely is a lost art, along with the 2 out of 3 fall television matches.
So one other question then now is, we've done the 60s. By the time the 80s came, there was still enhancement talent. 70s, there certainly was. Will we be doing a show on the 70s and 80s?
I would say 70s for sure. I think the 80s, you're going to have the guys that were here and there. They weren't consistently brought in to do weekly television. the business was changing, and then you got this worldwide audience. You didn't have the small studio. You didn't have the guys driving in from Milwaukee and Chicago. The 1970s, you certainly still had a lot of them left over. Angel Rivera, Tom Rocky Stone, they were out there. Jake Milliman, for example.
Let's do that a little while down the road.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just one other quick show idea. Talk about guys who hadn't made it here in the AWA, but then went on to become huge stars. I mean, Ric Flair, the Iron Sheik,
Slaughter.
There's a Slaughter. There's a whole slew of talent that really made it big in other territories, but when they were here, they were either just starting or they were enhancement talent. So I think that'd be an interesting show.
Agreed.
Yeah, let's do
Absolutely.
it. Let's do it. Let's give some shout outs here, guys, and then bring it home.
Okay.
All right. My buddy, longtime wrestling fan, wrestling collector, very astute and knowledgeable about the business, Brad Breitzman, not Bruce Kreitzman, Brad Breitzman. And Brad is such a great guy, loyal to the cause, big AWA fan. Hats off to you, buddy.
And my shout out is going to go to the person that first introduced me to professional wrestling. And I will say it's the reason that I became a fan. And here it is many years later, and I still am. Chris, you already said that we're recording this on September 12th, Friday, September 12th. Tomorrow would have been my mom's 81st birthday, and her, along with my godmother, would bring me to the matches, and two big old Polish women who absolutely loved and believed in professional wrestling right up to the very end. Even in the nursing home, 10 years ago, Mom would watch a WWE show, and while she didn't know who the talent really is anymore, she would just go get that son of a bitch. She would get into it like any of us do when we're watching the Minnesota Vikings. So got to give my shout out. It's not a blind dart throw. This one comes from the heart. It's to my mom, who would have been 81 tomorrow. So Jen Chupik, 100 lat, mama, 100 lat.
That was good, Joe. That was really good. I'm going to go with Travis Bird. Big fan of the podcast. Out in I believe Kearns, Utah, if I'm not mistaken. Just a pinfall member, and then left for a little bit and came back, and he's been, he'll send me messages all the time, loves the show. So Travis Bird, here's for you, buddy. And I'm gonna put my glasses back on because my eyes look beady as hell, but thank you for making me tear up there, Joe. It's your fault people get a chance to really see me without glasses, and I don't like that look.
It's interesting too. You talked about the big Polish women at the event. Your mom, was she a big Crusher fan?
Oh yeah. And that's probably where I got it from. Again, with the Polish heritage, throw in Mighty Igor, you throw in Ivan Putski, and then conversely, absolutely hated Baron von Raschke. Absolutely hated. My mom never blurred the line between good and bad when it came to professional wrestling. She despised the bad guys and loved the good guys. And if they were good guys who were Polish, forget it, over the top.
You think she would have been impressed with Wally?
In the shower or outside of the shower?
Listen, Mama Mama cup choop cake, Mama toothpaste, Chupik.
Yeah. She would have been kind of astounded by Wally, I think.
No, Mom, when I started working at the AWA, and Mom and Dad would come out to the studio every now and then. Dad was a carpenter, so he had built some of the sets and done some construction at the office. My mom was like the proverbial kid in a candy store and was an absolute awe of seeing Greg Gagne, Vern Gagne, Nick Bockwinkel, Ray Stevens, Wahoo McDaniel. She'd come over to the house. There'd be Larry the Accenting, beautiful Buddy Wolf. And every single time, big old smile would come on her face because she was actually able to meet and see and talk to somebody, not only just somebody who is on television, but somebody who is on television inside of the wrestling ring or doing a promo. And my mom, for AWA wrestling for my mom was must-see TV before NBC ever came on. The toughest thing for my mom was when AWA wrestling moved to 11 a.m. on Sunday mornings. And the reason is, well, they went to 12 o'clock mass. She didn't miss mass, but she hated the fact that, my dad didn't want to go to an earlier mass so that mom could watch her professional wrestling. She was a huge, tremendous, incredible wrestling fan, along with my godmother, Steffi Jevich. And my godmother was the epitome of a wrestling fan. She had the summer teeth, some are here, some are there, as I lost a while ago, waiting to get surgery for it. But those two, when you went to a St. Paul Civic Center, you went to any matches with them. I brought a buddy of mine. We were in like fourth grade, had him sit in between my mom and my godmother. And he was like, well, what the hell? I want to sit by you. I go, just for one match. Now, keep in mind, this is just the opening match. So here's this fourth grader who's probably weighed about 70 pounds. He didn't sprout up till later. The match starts, and there's my mom and my godmother. Oh, get him, get him, get him. Then from here, it's like, oh, punch him, get him, get him. And my buddy is looking at me like, help. Give me, and I'm just sitting there laughing because I knew what was going to happen to him. So, and then, of course, switch seats, and then I was the one that would get it from just one of them. So, anyway.
The mothers, the grandfathers, people who believed in the business, our ancestors who believed in the business. I won't belabor this. My grandfather, huge wrestling fan, lived in California. Fred Blassie and John Tolos, their feud, he would talk about it all the time. And I would kind of sit there with a little smirk on my face, letting him, he knew what he knew, but he didn't want to admit it. And I think that was kind of classic back then too. You couldn't pull the wool over everybody's eyes, but God damn it, just give us our 2 hours of suspension of disbelief, and that's all it took. Great stories, Joe. Great. Yeah. I love this. Yeah, let's do the 70s guys too. Yeah.
Okay. All right. We're just going to leave it at that.
Who shit to end with? Are we really going to end off on a good note?
I want to know, did you really have Larry Hennig in your house? I thought only one guy had Larry Hennig having a beer at his house. Now you're telling me you did?
Larry Hennig came over with beautiful Buddy Wolf. Buddy had some sign thing that he asked for some help for, and Larry was in real estate at the time.
I'm not buying it.
Yep.
There's only one guy that had a beer out on his deck and made Larry Hennig cry. See you next week.
No, we're not done.
You prick.
Oh, when you've got a madman at the controls, you just never know what's going to happen. And Chris,
it won't end. It won't end. For the love of God, end. End.
I was saying that after the first minute.
Oh,
God.
It better end. Chupic's going to take a dump, for God's sakes. It'll be right on. Camera
and
here.
recording. Stop. Stop.
For somebody who can push all of the buttons, you're having a difficult time pushing the right one this morning.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.